For 8 years she has lived with an incorrect diagnosis. Now the medicine and the symptoms are gone. It is far from a unique case, says the specialist. He believes that the errors in psychiatry are due to redistribution of resources. 8 years ago, Josephine Bjorn Knudsen was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but she herself has never agreed with that diagnosis. Therefore, in March this year, she asked Per Nhr Jensen, a specialist in psychiatry and PED, to review her patient record and reassess the diagnosis. His conclusion was simple. Josephine Bjorn Knudsen had been misdiagnosed. Unfortunately, this is not a unique case, says Per Nhr Jensen. Because according to him, you see more and more misdiagnoses in psychiatry. Diagnostics in psychiatry is in free fall, says Per Nhr Jensen in Copenhagen, Denmark. Josephine Bjorn Knudsen is happy that she has chosen to open up about her story, even though it has been hard. 8 years of wonder. In 2015, the then 18-year-old Josephine Bjorn Knudsen was admitted to psychiatry due to an eating disorder. According to Josephine Bjorn Knudsen, the treatment was compulsive, and therefore she developed symptoms such as claustrophobia, anxiety, and she began to see visions. Josephine Bjorn Knudsen told her story for the first time on Instagram in March. Photo, private photo. When she told the doctors about her symptoms, she was given new diagnosis paranoid schizophrenia which had to be treated with medication. The patient record, which TF2 has seen, shows. I have never been able to recognize myself in that diagnosis. It was a diagnosis that my previous therapists, a senior doctor and my family strongly disagreed with. But the doctors know best. So they convinced me that it was my fault, she says. This is what Josephine Bjorn Knudsen looked like when she was still suffering from anorexia. Josephine Bjorn Knudsen describes that she walked around like a zombie for 2 years, during which she could neither feel herself nor feel joy, all because of the medication. There is so much I can't remember. I didn't really get any kind of help. Therefore, she chose to stop taking the medication and suddenly she could recognize herself again, but she still had to live with the diagnosis, she says. It's a huge problem, and unfortunately it's a problem that's on the rise. Per Nhr Jensen, specialist in psychiatry and Ph.D. It wasn't until Josephine Bjorn Knudsen read an article about a woman who had been misdiagnosed with schizophrenia instead had PTSD that it dawned on her that the doctors might not be right after all. And Per Nhr Jensen confirmed that this year, after gaining insight into her patient record and a long conversation with Josephine Bjorn Knudsen, he was able to ascertain that she had been misdiagnosed. A boring trend. But unfortunately there are more stories like Josephine Bjorn Knudsen's. That's how it sounds from Per Nhr Jensen. It is a huge problem, and unfortunately it is a problem that is increasing, and it is rooted in an enormous loss of knowledge in public psychiatry, he believes. Josephine Bjorn Knudsen found that the medicine made her sicker. That's why she stopped. Photo, private photo. Jana Lorensen, who is Secretary General of PED Psychiatry, which is the National Association for Relatives of People with Mental Disorders, and Suzanne Women, Chairman of the Association of Psychiatrists, agree. Misdiagnosis is a major problem in psychiatry. When the diagnosis is wrong, patients are given the wrong medicine. And when everything is rushed and the diagnosis is constantly changing, the medication risks becoming a chaotic, uncontrolled cocktail that no one has an overview of, says Jana Lorensen. Per Nhr Jensen, who has 40 years of experience in public psychiatry and teaches diagnostics, has seen a problematic development in psychiatry. As it is today, it is a very necessary education they get out there. This applies to both diagnosis and treatment, assesses the specialist. File access to the number of misdiagnoses in psychiatry. F2 has sought access to documents from the Agency for Patient Complaints regarding the number of complaints about a diagnosis in psychiatry. It was rejected because misdiagnosis is not recorded as a specific searchable value in the individual case, and therefore it would require a manual review of all cases. That is why he demands that research be started on how to restore psychiatry, but it is not going to be easy, he believes. There is a process underway, but it will take 10 or 15 years before psychiatry is again up to a level where there are well-trained staff. It will be the long, tough haul. Feeling good today. In Josephine B.J.O.N. Hudson's case, the story ended well. Today, she is self-employed with a yarn shop, where she also holds crochet and knitting CAFS, and she says that she has a good family, a good boyfriend, and that she is doing well completely without medication. But she also says that it was a burden that was lifted from her shoulders when she was told that she had been misdiagnosed. It filled much more than I had thought. The next day I felt so light. I felt like I was flying around. Even though Josephine B.J.O.N. Hudson was told that she was too ill to take an education, she defied it and followed her gut feeling. Photo, private photo. When Pierre N.H.R. Jensen denied the schizophrenia diagnosis, he told Josephine B.J.O.N. Hudson that she has anxiety instead. That diagnosis suits Josephine B.J.O.N. Hudson much better, she feels. It is a diagnosis that I can reflect on much more. I can actually feel that it is true. 100 million. Minister of the Interior and Health Sophie L.H.D.E. the fifth, acknowledges that there are problems in psychiatry. It makes a big impression on me when I hear about processes where patients do not feel that they are getting the help they need. It is neither satisfactory for the individual patient nor the therapist, says the minister in a written reply. Sophie L.H.D.E. emphasizes that it is important to diagnose correctly and start with the right treatment. Photo 2. According to Sophie L.H.D.E., it can be difficult to make the correct diagnosis because mental disorders are complex. Therefore, she also believes that more should be invested in training the staff. In order to strengthen efforts in psychiatry, we have allocated DKK 100 million in new research funds targeting mental disorders, says the minister.